Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, May the 1st. Welcome to the month of May and welcome to our commentary. Just a couple of quick things here. We have signed apparently this minerals deal with Ukraine, and that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for both countries. In the case of Ukraine, it puts to use some of their resources, and frankly, in the case of the United States, it puts the United States in Ukraine without having to make a military commitment. And I think that's a good thing for both sides. I really do. I think it's a good deal. So, congratulations to both countries for signing this deal. And just quickly, I have a post over at the American Thinker this morning talking about the media and and what just happened with President Biden, where a lot of people in the media are now discovering that somehow they didn't cover that story, and they're sort of blaming a lot of different things. They're blaming the White House, even Chuck Todd, who used to be with NBC. I don't think he's with NBC anymore, but he was saying you got to blame Democrats. There's some truth to that. Okay, there is some truth to that. I'm not saying that that's completely wrong. Clearly, more Democrats should have come out, particularly in the summer of 23, and should have gone to the White House, or maybe should have gone to the First Lady and say, look, he's in no shape to run, so let's just get him out. Let's get him out gracefully, and we'll give him a nice reception at the convention, and we'll move on. But they waited too long. That debate with that debate between President Trump and President Biden was a disaster for him. And then the whole campaign of Vice President Harris was also a big disaster. So, yeah, the Democrats are to blame. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're not to blame to some extent. But the reality is that many people in the media decided not to push the story or not to make a big deal out of it. And I think a lot of it was just driven by dislike of Trump. They didn't want Trump to benefit from this. I think that's what drove it. That's what drove it. And that didn't do the country any good. And unfortunately, didn't do the media any good. That's what, if you look at some of the ratings and some of the impressions that the American people have, this whole thing with President Biden didn't do the press or the media any good. So hopefully everybody has learned their lesson here, that don't get so caught up on disliking Trump, I guess, that you lose your common sense. Because I think that's what happened to many of these people. That's what happened to them. They lost their common sense over Donald Trump. That's what I think drove a lot of this stuff. Let me tell you about this obsession with 90 days, 100 days, the 90 days of Trump, 100 days of Trump, day 100. I think the whole thing is frankly a waste of time. And 90 days or 100 days is nothing at all. There's nothing about 90 days or 100 days that measures a presidency. It's as simple as that. It's just absolutely, it's a cosmetic deadline. It's created deadline that doesn't mean anything. And I'll just give you a couple of examples of our two recent presidents. The last two presidents who were elected and reelected. That means George W. Bush and Barack Obama. At this stage of the presidency, meaning 100 days for President Bush, that would have been 2001, he didn't really know what kind of president he was going to be, and the country didn't really know what kind of president he could be. And there was a sense of, there was kind of an identity crisis. He didn't know whether he was going to be the compassionate conservative, whether he was going to focus on domestic issues and so on. That was his idea. But, he was having a hard time introducing that to the country because, let's face it, the country was divided. Then comes 9/11, and everything changes. Everything changes. Now, all of a sudden, President Bush is a war president. He's the anti-terrorist president. And not only that, but his ratings go up to the roof. And 18 months later, when we have our midterms, he does extremely well in the midterms. He picks up a couple of Senate seats and a Senate majority, and he does real well in the House. Okay? All because of 9/11, in the sense that he was doing the right thing in how he was responding to what happened on 9/11. Now, let's take a look at President Obama. At this stage of the game, that would have been 100 days at this time in 2009. President Obama was literally walking on water. I mean, there was a sense that he was going to be something historic. He was, I guess, because he was the first black president. But I mean, in terms of performance, that he was going to be historic, that he was going to be something that we had never seen before, and that he was going to, lead the country and transform the country with huge majorities in the House and almost 60 votes. I think he did have 60 votes actually in the Senate. And 18 months later, when the midterm comes around, he gets really hit hard. He lost, I think, 47 House seats. He lost the majority in the House by a lot. And he almost lost the Senate. I think he survived by a couple of senators. But I mean, the Obama of the midterms in 2010 was totally different than the Obama that we were watching at this point in 2009. What happened? Well, Obamacare had to be explained, and that became a real problem for him and the Democrats. Also, he had to back down on some campaign promises, like closing Guantanamo, like making big changes in Iraq. In fact, he didn't make any changes in Iraq. He pretty much kept the plan that Bush had given him in place, and he had to send 40,000 troops to Afghanistan as well. So obviously, as time went by, he lost popularity, and Bush, on the other hand, as time went by, gained popularity. I bring up these two examples because it shows you what the fallacy of this 90-day, 100-day measurement is all about. It means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. Now, let's talk about President Trump. He's got a lot of balls up in. Okay, he really does. Over the next 90 days, I think if things work out well for him, he's going to get a bunch of trade deals. This minerals deal with Ukraine is going to help. He will come up with some trade deals that will show the country that we can negotiate in better terms. We will be able to sell more cars in South Korea and Japan and in Europe, and balance out those relationships. I think he will do a deal with Canada because Canada has to do a deal with the United States. They don't really have the luxury of being very tough. And I think with Mexico, I'm pretty sure they'll come up with something. But I think overall, and eventually with the European Union and with China, that might take a little longer, but you could see the makings of that over the next 90 days. If that were to happen, and then on top of that, you have the reconciliation, the budget, and the tax plan that would go through reconciliation, what they like to call the beautiful bill. If all of that goes through, he's going to look pretty. He's going to look really pretty as we go into Labor Day and Thanksgiving and the New Year. He's going to be in a very strong political position. Obviously, it can go the other way. All of those trade deals and all of that stuff could fall apart. And if that's the case, he's not going to look good. But we don't have any idea of it right now, 90 days, 100 days into his presidency. We really don't. We don't have any idea how all of this is going to work out. Now, my gut feeling is that he's going to get the trade deals. And of course, I'm pretty sure he's going to get the budget through the reconciliation. And that includes a lot of things in that budget. That's going to be, I think, a very significant piece of legislation that he's going to get through reconciliation. And that is going to look good on him. And the markets are going to like that. The markets are going to like it as soon as these trade deals get done. And apparently a couple of them are pretty close to being done. So if all of that comes through for President Trump, yes, he's ready at the end of the year. The market will come back up, and the economy, the sense in the country about the economy will change for the better. And he'll be in a pretty strong position heading into 2026. Again, the opposite is true. If none of those things come through and all these deals don't happen, and the net results of all of these tariffs is, very high inflation and people are angry and so on, yes, it could all fall apart at the same time. Again, my feeling is that it's going to come through okay for him, because I think there's just too many other countries in the world who need to do business with the United States. That's the beauty of the United States. Right now, the United States is in a very strong position to negotiate with South Korea or Japan or the European Union and so on, because they need our markets. They really need our markets. And the same with China. The same with China. So I am actually optimistic that over the next 90, even 180 days, you're going to see a lot of these things fall into place. But there's no way of measuring, and that's my larger point here. There's no way of measuring the success or the failure of a presidency after 90 days or 180 days. That is a cosmetic deadline or a cosmetic measurement, something that somebody came up with to say, how is he doing after 90 days or 100 days? I mean, it sounds good. It's really good, but it's not a very good measurement of anything. It doesn't tell you anything about how he's going to do. So that's why I don't get excited about these 90-day, 100-day reports. I think a lot of it is just either politically motivated or, frankly, just cosmetic. As I said before, it doesn't really mean anything. Looking ahead down the road. Another quick thing that I wanted to tell you is that I've got a post coming out tomorrow, Friday, talking about babies and talking about the fact that we need more babies in the United States. We definitely need them in the West. I mean, in Europe and so on, South Korea as well, Japan as well. And we need them here because we're not reproducing. We're not reproducing. And I don't think it's going to pain women to have babies. I don't think that that's the answer. I think it's a much larger point than that. And that is that we have to somehow restore the idea of having families. We have to somehow, the next generation is going to have to somehow think about having families and how important that is, not just for them as potential parents, but for the country. I mean, you got to have babies if you want to keep your culture going forward. And if you want people to pay taxes to support the people who are getting old. So it's very important. Having babies is very important. And we're not doing that right now. And we got to get that number up. Hopefully in the next generation, we'll get it up to where we are at least replacing ourselves with the new babies. One quick thing from on this day in history. If you're a baseball fan, you may remember this. On this day in 1991, Nolan Ryan pitched his 7th no-hitter. He did it right here in Texas. He did it against Toronto. I heard it on the radio, and it was a very exciting night. So Nolan Ryan, number 7, he's the only one who's thrown 7. The next one is Sandy Koufax, and he's got 4. So, there's a big difference between 4 and 7 no-hitters. So we congratulate Nolan Ryan. Great memory. May the 1st, 1991. I can remember I was outside playing catch with my sons, and we had it on the radio. And there it was, Nolan Ryan, no-hitter number 7. Thanks for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.